Okay, Jeremy Vickery, welcome back to another
Hello.
live stream.
Yeah, this is exciting. It's great to do again.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. If you guys don't know who Jeremy Vickery is, you probably seen him over here on YouTube before as lighting mentor. This tag down here.
Mhm.
You've guaranteed been suggested one of his videos, whether it was from his channel itself or from ours. Jeremy is an incredibly talented artist. He won't say it, but I will. He's a person who doesn't just teach you to make nice looking pixels, but to make the nice looking pixels look nicer for real reasons. Jeremy, what are we going to be talking about today?
All right, we're going to talk about cinematic lighting. I think so many people paint pictures to be pretty, but we really want to make it to be cinematic, and that is a word that comes with so much conflict. It means too many things. So you want to talk about this? This seemed like a good topic for the crew today.
I think it's a good one, and people did happen to vote on it and choose this one. So I think we stay here to their choice. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, we did post on a few different socials and everything that Jeremy does have a brand new course. The one right here that is on both of those lower thirds is his Painting Light 103 that is currently on sale for 20% off. If you guys have already gotten his Painting Light 101 and 102, you can go ahead and get that 103, or if you didn't get the others, those are also on sale. But I won't stop you guys with any more preamble. Jeremy, I want you to teach these people and to answer their questions that they might leave in the chat here.
Perfect.
So
okay, so I started, and I will start painting as a demo in a moment. Let me put this on screen. I'll start with this to give you kind of an idea here. But when I started Lighting Mentor, when I started this YouTube channel, it was to share my experience of lighting in cinema. And I think that a lot of universities and a lot of schools just don't teach cinematography. They teach animation, they teach 3D modeling really great, they teach drawing skills, but like cinematic lighting is something that's really important. And I have so much passion about this that I want to share. So real quick about the courses. The 101 is like for anyone who has never painted before, learn how to paint. That's it. Learn how to copy things. The 102 course is like an advanced coloring book where you say, all right, learn how to add lighting, believable lighting into any type of line drawing. And so it's just about believability, understanding the way light works, the physics of light to be able to add believable lighting. The 103 though is where I'm really the most excited about. And this is the storytelling side of it. Why would you light things a certain way? And that's what we'll talk about today. So we're going to do some live demo of painting of an environment, and we're going to try to make it cinematic. So let's talk about what cinematic means to me. Because a lot of people, I think cinematic means this, this LUT filter on your camera, or it just looks like a movie, which is some ethereal thing. It just looks extra pretty. And so many people go to make art that is just pretty. And I think cinema means story. Like cinema, you're going there to hear a story. So you want to draw your eye in the composition using light to the thing that's most important to convey information. And I think when we look at the way lighting has been done in old paintings, like if you go to a museum, if you go to the Louvre, go to the d'Orsay, go to different places, different big art museums of classic art, those were meant to be consumed slowly. Like you come in and you look at an image and you have as much time as you want to look at it. But the average length of a frame of film or a shot in a film is only 4 to 5 seconds. So you have to convey all of the information in this entire screen in 4 or 5 seconds. And then you're cutting to something else and the camera moves on and flows through the scene. So it's even more important to use light to draw our eye to the most important thing, to focal points.
Absolutely.
So this is my idea of cinematic is story. And I will always promote story over beauty. And that sounds, of course we want story and beauty, but if you have to sacrifice something, put story first, put beauty second.
Yeah, because we've all seen like a technically poorer image, like even possibly like a worse composition in many ways. But if it's still got something interesting in it that's happening, where to look and you participate in that image rather than just going, pretty, and scrolling past it on your Instagram feed or whatever.
How many people, we were talking a little bit before the stream started, and I love the analogy of music because a lot of people learn, somebody can teach you guitar in a couple of minutes and teach you like, let's do 2 or 3 chords. This is really great. You play it, you got some rhythm, you're really excited about that. You're playing a song, you're like, yeah, I'm a musician now. This is awesome. I'm just so happy to be a musician. And we do the same with art, that like we learn a couple of things, we get some perspective, we get a little bit of like gesture and understanding flow and energy and weight. We're like, look, I'm an artist. This is amazing. I just want to do this professionally. And then we draw these pictures that are just like an anime girl standing at a window doing nothing, and like it's a castle sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah. And the classic in my mind was always the really well rendered like Goku charging up that people were drawing when I was in junior high. They rendered the crap out of it. They freaking nailed it. Akira Toriyama would be so proud of it. But it doesn't do anything. If you have like a full sketchbook that's full of like every single person in Dragon Ball charging up to Super Saiyan, like it doesn't necessarily do a thing. They're good images, but they just don't tell a story. And that's not to say that anime is bad. Don't think I said anime is bad. Anime is awesome. No.
But the difference, like if you want to be a professional artist, especially now in the age of AI and all of these changes in the world, the thing that's going to bubble to the top, there's 2 things that I think that, can allow us to stay relevant in the age of AI. And this is having something worth telling. Tell a story in your images that make people go, whoa, that's cool. What's happening in the scene? If you can draw them in, it's kind of like if you want a video, you want a hook. You want something that makes you go, I have to find out what happens next. And you want to do that through your illustrations to go, what is happening in this world? That's fascinating. I want to talk to this artist. And with, studios getting tens of thousands of portfolios, if they see another picture of a sci-fi alleyway, of just a person standing, in a window, they're just going to go next. Like superbly done, no story. We were looking for somebody who knows how to craft emotion and storytelling first, and then has all, like, we're just going to assume that you have all of the basics of the other skills really solidly. We need you to know how to draw. We need you to know how to do poses. We need you to design environments and design characters and pose those characters in these environments and light them and have good materials and all of that stuff. Like that's the base. And then what will make you actually get the job is the storytelling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to bring back your Photoshop screen now.
Yeah, let's talk about this. So, I mean, a couple of days ago, I posted a video on my YouTube channel specifically about storytelling, and you can go and look at that if you want to see how I got to this place. But like, I was using real estate photos to inspire me into stories, and sometimes there's amazing visual storytelling when you see somebody's houses. Like photographers go in to sell a house, something happened, somebody had to move out rapidly, there was renters in there, somebody died, something crazy happened, and they have to sell this house. And I find it fascinating as an artist to look at these stories and say, who lives here? Like, it's just kind of fun to imagine in your mind who lives here. So I did this very light sketch, and I think it's important for us to understand that every drawing or painting has what we call a teenager phase. And this is the gangly kind of tripping over itself, scribbly blah moment, but this is normal. Everyone does this. So this was my first sketch, and I wanted to build an environment that was rich with story and to make you go, who lives here? So I started with this loose sketch to figure out the perspective and what was going to be in there with my scribbles. And then I did a finer line over top. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a big old bed, and it's going to be like very organic, and there's some sort of creature that lives here, but I want to throw in fun things too. So there's axes, and there's, demon horns and candles that'll make it feel dark, but then there's like a little dragon over here and a fireplace and some instruments and some teddy bears and things like that. And then I refined it even more, and this is what we're going to paint with today. And how do we light this? So this is my line art. This is the guide. And who lives here? I'm going to give you a preview of what I did before. So this was the final painting of, of this scene. And my whole goal is to make you go, that's an interesting space. I want to suck you into the space and make you say, what does the character look like that lives here? Who is this character? Why are they here?
And even though all of those different things that you were talking about, all of those individual objects and every single line that you drew in there, all of that rich detail, the intense amount of detail that's in there, those are still there. It's just that you gave people rest and focus areas throughout the image so that they actually get pulled through it to examine different things in chunks and with intention.
Right. And so if I were to approach a film, let's say that I got the concept design that was something like this. Now, this is a visual mess. Like if I were to just show you this as a thumbnail, it's like, whoa, it's just so much. So we have to use light on top of this geometric composition. Like we have the geometry, we have the perspective, we have the camera, we have the objects that are in here, but how would we light this in different ways to tell a story? One of the things that I wanted to do with this illustration was make, like you said, areas of focus. So like there's a cool room back here and I put some atmosphere to kind of push it into the background. And then there's a little warm cove over here with the fireplace. And then there's the area with the bed that's kind of a transition in between. So there's like 3 different kind of spaces here. Now we can relight this in different ways. What I didn't do is put a character into this. So today we could pop a character into this world and it kind of goes invisibly in here. But like, what if this jolly little monster right in the middle? Where do we place that character? What's happening in the scene? So like as a director of photography or an art director, I would look at this and I would say, well, what is the point of the scene? What is the character going to do? Where is the character going to work through this space? It's like when I'm doing live action filmmaking, I always want to block in things. And we usually have a pre-light day where we're looking at the characters are going to move this way through the scene. And they're trying to figure out the camera angles and the lensing, but we're also trying to figure out how can we make the light support the characters in this space? So like, how do we light this environment in a way that will make sure that the character is really, really clear? Because the character is usually the focal point. Well, the characters are always the focal point, so I'm going to look at this space and say, where do I want, like I could draw the character sitting in the chair. I could put the character on the bed. I could do so many different things, but I really want to make sure that I shape the character with light using the environment.
There's a classic phrase for cinematography that I think also helps when making art at this point. Yeah. I can't separate the two for myself. There's the classic phrase of light spaces, not faces. Yeah. And I think that informs so much.
It really does. Well, it's funny, whenever I teach, I learn the most because I have to take concepts that are just intuitive and pull it out of my subconscious and turn it into words. Mm-hmm. And as I was trying to figure out how do you cinematically light environments, there was one theme that came out, because if you look at hard set rules, like we often love rules that say, this is the way to do a thing, just follow this rule. I think it's better to see things as a tool, not a rule, because you can break something. As like, I decided not to use this tool, but I can in this place, and I can pick, which tools I'm using. These are effective tools for visual storytelling. And then you can find images from cinema that break these rules, but there are themes. I'm trying to understand the theme. And if I were to summarize what we want to do with lighting, is we want to see a change in the light. Summarize my whole Painting Light 103 down to this concept. I want to, on screen, see a change in the light that adds contrast to very particular places. So you have light on dark, dark on light. That is a massive tool for cinematographers, and it frees you from the rule of you always have to have a 3/4 key. Like the way I've lit myself in this space, I have a warm light coming from this side. I have a rim light from this side. I actually have a lot of light from my monitor right now. So if I minimize this window, you can see I have a little bit of a core shadow. I'm following basic 3-point lighting right now. So I have light from one side where you can see the change in the light, and then I have a light from behind where you can see that change in the light. So wherever you place these lights, you don't have to place them in at exactly 45-degree angles. Like they can come from below, they can come from bounce light, they can come from so many different places. The key thing is being able to go, I want to see my face off of the background. I want color contrast, the warm of my skin over the purple of the background. I want to see rim lights. Like I have all of my lights that I can come and turn them on and off right now and change the way the lighting is, but I'm always looking for contrast. These hair lights that are up behind me this way and that way, they're rimming my shoulders. All of these are very intentional to add separation and contrast and depth through the change in light, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense. It's an often missed thing.
Yeah. I mean, we are too often trying to mimic what other people have done and following the rules of what other people have done before we're really thinking about what are we communicating? How are we using contrast in a way to draw attention to something in the scene? Actually, before we started, we were also talking about a little bit about tools. Because I think a lot of people come to me and the most common question I hear is, what brush do you use? And
it's the classic.
It is the classic picture. Where did my scene? Okay, there's my scene. People are like, what brush do you use? Because that is the thing that I need to know. And a lot of universities right now and different schools and online classes, they teach things like Photoshop. And here's layers, and here's all of these buttons, and here's hundreds of brush packs, and here's these LUT packs for your cameras, and that's going to make it cinematic. And to me, those are important, but by about 2%. Everything else is really in the lights themselves. What are we doing? I could paint this entire scene that we're going to do with a standard round brush if we wanted, and just use a sharp and a soft round brush, and just do the whole thing that way, and really kind of pay attention to the lights themselves.
To anyone who's not necessarily as familiar with digital art and everything, when he's saying standard, it's not like it's standard and he picked it up from somewhere, like built into Photoshop, just to make it clear.
This is the brush that comes up when you load the software from the start, and every brush has this. Like if I start painting now with this brush, it's just a soft brush. If I switch over to this one has a little bit of pen pressure. I could paint the entire thing just using these tools if I want to, and build the whole scene. So it's not about the brushes, it's about the storytelling. I wanted to see, before we start painting this, are there any questions? I just want to make it interactive.
There was one question that we got so far, and this was Chatastioko was asking. They said, "Hi, Jeremy. Are there lighting patterns that one can follow when composing a picture? Often when I compose scenes, I end up just spotlighting my subject. It gets kind of bland and heavy-handed at times. So do you think that there's any sort of like standard lighting things? Like, a composition can kind of fall onto like the rule of thirds and things like that. Do you think that there's anything for this?"
Yeah, one of the biggest tools that I'm going to give you is to remember, like beginner lighting artists and beginner illustrators often think, what are my light sources? Like if I look at this space and say, what are my potential light sources and do I want to use them? So let me just draw some of them. I mean, I can try this with just a standard brush. Let's just see. I'll just use the soft round brush as a demonstration. So if I look at sources, I can say, well, there's windows over here. So there's going to be light from those windows. That is one potential light source. There are candles over here. I'm just going to draw attention to it. And then there is a fireplace over here.
So you think starting with those identifications of what the possible light sources are is a good choice?
I think this is a good starting point, but this is not where we want to end, because this is old school cinematography. This is like elementary lighting 101. So we look at this and we say, first identify what the light sources are. Now there's going to be the next step to this is to remember that bounce light is a source. And in fact, there has been a shift in cinema over the past 30 years. If you look at cinema from the 80s and before, the 90s and before, things, the film stock required so much light that they would often bring out these really, really hot, bright electric light sources that were so hot that they could set things on fire in order to expose. They did. Yeah, they did. They had all kinds of problems. And it developed a certain look to cinema that was with direct light sources. So there's this really harsh light sources, and Technicolor, when color came out, they wanted to see the local color, like the Wizard of Oz in the 1930s. They wanted to see the colors of the yellow brick road and the dresses and the ruby slippers, and they really wanted to see those colors. So they required that their cinematographers make the lights white. And they always had rim lights, and those were white, bright lights. And for 40, 50 years, that was the look of cinema, was bright, white, direct light sources. So if there's a lamp, the lamp lights the character, and it needs to be really bright. as things changed and our film stocks got more sensitive, and then when we switched over to digital and digital sensors got better, now we can film in candlelight. Now we can film in bounce light. And there was a shift in cinematography to say that when I'm looking at this, I could, instead of just lighting my character with a spotlight, I could have a bright spot in one place and then use that to explode the light and softly rim light. Like if you pop back to my face really quick, if we just do my face, I'm gonna pull up my controls here. All of my lights are cinema lights, and let me turn this on because I can control them from my phone. So if I turn off some of these lights, like right now, if I turn off, that's a rim light over there. These are my different lights kind of in the background. There's a little lamp in the background. I can turn that off. So basically I'm lighting myself with one light source. The strange thing is that light is actually over there, and it's bouncing off of a big card that I have on the wall over here. And what the bounce does, it does, there's two reasons for this. One, there's no space over there. There's a big wall right there, just off screen. But because I make this big bounce card, it took my small light source and turned it into something this big. So the shadows from my nose are really soft, from my neck are really soft. It gives a softer quality of the light. Like look at the shadow from my glasses onto my face. That is a light source with directionality, but it's soft. So one of the words we use all the time as lighting artists is directionality. I want to feel where that light source is coming from. So remember that you can use bounce light. This is such a powerful tool to say we can diffuse light through curtains. We can bounce it off of a floor. So any object in this scene can become a light source. And that's what's going to give you that variety. Remember, there's also, when we think about specular reflections, and this is a powerful tool, like this is why the advanced topics of understanding lighting, color, and materials when you're painting, to say, what is the material property of the plastic of my headphones? What is it of metal? What makes metal look like metal? How does it reflect the scene? What does plastic, what does skin do? What is the sheen of my glasses? Each of these things, understanding them, and you can think about things as primary light sources, so direct from the light source. So if I have a light source, there is a direct reflection right there, and that is the prime highlight. You'll see highlights in a character's eyes. But then there's the secondary reflections. It's just like bounce light is the secondary light. There's also secondary reflections. The reflections over here, all these little tiny reflections, and they're in my glasses where you can see the subtle things in the rest of the room. Like if I have a shiny object on screen, there is the direct light source of, you can see that light right there. There's the prime specular highlight. But it's all these extra little shadows through here, these extra little reflections and the details and the refractions. The secondary light is usually that thing that can be used to softly rim things and to add just a little bit of highlight over here and over there. Like if you start studying, I was just drinking coffee earlier, and you start looking at light sources, it's like, can you see this little rim light on the edge of my cup? And that's coming from a reflection of the light on my face. Like that's my hand right there in the reflection. That is
you can see it. You can see it get more of that, the local color of your hand as part of the bounce light, the source that it's bouncing off of.
Like this is cool, and then suddenly it's warm, and like to me, this is like a magic trick. This is being able to go, I've got a coin in my hand, I grab it into this hand, and it's not in this hand, and it's not in this hand. Woo, magic! It's not like I just dropped it into my lap, but it's smoke and mirrors. So like as an illustrator, we can use these things, and as somebody who wants to be a student of light, you can start like looking for, there's light over here on my neck, and I've turned off all of my extra light sources. Like that's just bounce light that is making a slight rim that's separating me from sunlight from the other room. And it's kind of bouncing through the house, and now it's forming this subtle, soft rim that wasn't intentional, but I can use that. So the more we study things, we go, first, identify the prime light sources. Second, consider what we could do with bounce light sources. And once you understand this, and using bounce as a way to draw attention to certain regions and certain areas, pools of light, where we say like there's a pool of bright light on the floor, and then it kind of explodes into soft light over here. And then we can use that to rim and to shape and to, really define a character and a silhouette of a character. And then there's another pool of light over here. And remember, this is the yin and yang of light. It's not just pools of light, it's also pools of dark. Like we have something in live action that we don't often use in illustration and we don't often use in games or animation. And this is negative fill. So these are anti-light sources. These are big pieces of cloth that you bring in that are just dark. They're black as possible. I actually bought a piece of foam core last week, and I bought some of that paint that they're like, this is the blackest black.
Some like not Vanta black.
Right. So like I painted this piece of foam core, that super black, to use as a negative fill card, because now it like super sucks light. So I bring that out into the sun, and I can use that to shape and remove light. So remembering that pools of darkness are a way to also draw attention or pull attention away from things that don't need that attention.
Absolutely.
I think that demonstrating this in the painting is probably going to be the best way to go here.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, because you were talking about so the things that you were saying were identifying those sources, seeing what you could possibly do with bounce and fill from those, and making those pools of light. So here you've gone through and identified what are these are all the primary light sources that you had in the final piece. And then I would also say were the possible main light sources.
Right. And then we can think of things that are off camera as well. Like if there's a window over here, there could be a window behind us. There could be.
Where's that window? The cursor's kind of small a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry. Let me,
you just like circle aside or draw a little arrow whenever.
Yeah. Let me do another layer and just draw it in red. So like we could have like, there's light that's coming over here, through these windows. Maybe there's another light source. Let's make this in like, there could be a window just off screen over here that could be shining in this way into the scene. And you could use this to like rim light the side of this and like, have a soft pool of light that is coming from off screen. Implied light sources are just as valid of a light source. So I'm going to look at this whole space and go, where do I want to draw attention? Let's do a poll real quick. Do you want to have the character in the scene or not?
All right, let's see. I'm going to start a poll so we can get the voting. All right. In the meantime, feel free to. Is there any sort of scene or a resource that you use that gives you some examples that you refer to, like Shot Deck or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Ever? Let's talk about Shot Deck, because Shot Deck is incredible.
So for you guys to vote in the meantime.
Let me log into Shot Deck real quick, and let's go ahead and use this. Let's use this as a reference, because I mean, I have enough experience to pull things out of my head, but if we have something like Shot Deck, we could just randomly browse and just say, all right, what type of things do I want to, what are colors? Like I can just randomly draw from things that I've seen, cinema scenes that are already beautiful. I could also say, like, I want to see interior, exterior. So let's say interiors. We could change the time of day, and I could just look for reference. Like, what is the mood to this? Maybe this is the other thing that we could say. What is the mood that we want to give this room? Like as a director of photography, when I work, and as a lighting director, I often will come to the director and say, well, what is the mood that you're going for? Do you want it to be creepy? Do you want it to be really happy and warm? Do you want it to really be strong and mysterious? What are we going to do with the mood so that I can use the light to match that? And then I can look for reference that will give me that as a starting place. It'll give me some of the colors to simplify.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 84% yes. The no's aren't going to take it. I'm calling the election.
All right. So I'm going to take, I'm going to do this because I just painted in that character at the very last second here. So I'm going to load that and I'm going to remove that from the line art, and I'm going to merge these things down. And I can hide that. Okay, let's paint this scene. I'm going to do a brush that is, I could continue using this soft opaque one, but I'm going to use one that's a little bit more pressure sensitive. For me, this is just a brush that I like. The reason why I like this one is I can, like, if I build a strong color, I can paint really hard and get that color, and then I can kind of fade it off and just barely touch into the scene if I want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll do this with the character in the scene. So I want to draw enough.
Jeremy, I did want to let you know, remind you, all of your lights are off now. Do you want to restore your light settings?
Ooh, okay, ready? Watch this. I have presets. I am such a lighting nerd. You should see my house at night. I have all Philips Hue lights in my house. So like I have party lights, and like I have different settings. So like this is my main recording setting, like my main YouTube setting. Like turns on all the lights.
There we go. Look, there's the motivated light back there that motivates the yellow on your face.
Exactly. Or I have a different setup that is my my purple setup, which is like my fall time. You know, it's getting near Halloween, so I get some purples in there. I'll leave it on this one for now. And then of course I have my painting mode. Most people see this and they think that this is how I spend my time painting. I'm like, oh no, if you want to see what I do in the painting mode, this is where I have my room in neutral, kind of 50% gray. Now my camera's exposing down, but this is where I do most of my painting, is like neutral light, 50% gray, no rim lights, no reflections on my monitor, just kind of work really, really gentle. But we'll come back to the prettier lights for this, because I'm a lighting nerd and I can.
A lighting mentor even.
A lighting mentor. Okay, so what I like to do is let's just focus on the space to say, I want to make sure that we can really see the character in the center. And then I want, like, that will be the prime focus, is the character right here. And then we can have secondary focus. Let's just say the prime focus is the character. The secondary focus is his pet, this little dragon that's over here. So I'm going to start with, let's go ahead and do the whole process. Let's look for some reference. What is the mood that we want in this? So the character looks really cheerful, but the thing with my storytelling here is that this character looks cheerful, but has a dark side, like wants to be spooky, but really isn't spooky, you know, like has, you know, skulls and spikes and things like that. So maybe we can give this a very soft, kind of creepy mood to it. So let's look for some scenes in Shot Deck that have a mood. So these are all interiors. We could say daytime. Why don't we say daytime? Daytime interiors, and it's going to show us 700,000 shots here, and it's loading more of them. I'm just going to look for something that inspires me. I like the idea of lots of fog. Fog will make this really, really cinematic. I like the idea of maybe like this isn't bad. This type of feeling of there's light that's coming in, but it's a little bit creepy. There's pools of dark, you know, and these soft lamps. So maybe we can make the fire kind of going out just a little bit. So why don't I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy this image and I'm going to bring it over into a new layer, and I'll just hit paste.
It's just for you to have the reference nice and right there for you.
Right. You know, so that I can just use this. Actually, what I normally do is if I'm in Photoshop, I create a new layer and paste it in here. And then I take this and just scale back and leave this as just kind of I love floating windows as well. I know that a lot of people like Photoshop wants me to like docked windows, but I don't like that. I like to be able to have different scenes. Maybe I'll zoom back just one layer to really see this. So this could be our starting place. Maybe I will make my background just a little bit more cool and atmospheric, but let's just try this as a starting place. So the first thing that I want to do is find a general tone. And this is something that I would do with traditional paintings as well. And I'm just going to fill with a solid mid-tone color, mid to dark tone. So if I'm doing an oil painting or an acrylic painting, I'm going to prep the canvas. I don't want white on screen getting in my way. I don't want to work from the top and work my way through the bottom. I want to look at this holistically and kind of find the space. So it's going to be in the teenager zone as we start this.
Can you explain that a little bit more for a person who's new to painting or digital painting? What is the problem with having that fully white looking at you while you fill in general areas?
Okay, so if I start by saying, I'm going to paint this character here, and I'm going to get all of the colors here, and like, I think that like, if I'm working my way through this by subject, you know, I'm just like, okay, let's say that the character's skin is like this, and maybe the little feet and the hands. I'm like, if I focus on one thing at a time, one of the problems is that I am not looking at the color relative to the colors around it. My eye sees all of this white, and it's messing with the way I perceive colors. If I come under this, like if I put some darker colors as a base around this color now, it's going to feel really, it might feel too bright. Like there's an entire idea of color relativity is, colors next to each other. If I put a bunch of warm colors next to a gray, that gray is going to look blue. If I put that same gray next to a bunch of cold colors, it's going to look warm. So this is a whole thing of like, let's just avoid this by starting with a color that's not white. Let's start somewhere where you can work your way up and down. I think that a lot of people are used to a canvas and are used to white pages where they're drawing on a white page. And that's great for line art, not so great for painting. So if I look at this scene, I'm going to start with the ambient light and just say, I'm going to just build in some of the soft shadows first. And this is something that I talk extensively about in the Painting Light 102 course, is like learning to understand the physics of light. Like as I go to paint this, there's going to be slight soft shadows everywhere. There's this thing called ambient occlusion, and I'm going to do this really on a really big scale to just say like the bed's going to cast soft shadows onto the scene. This table is going to cast soft shadows. This chair is going to be a little bit darker into the corners. I'm just going to paint in some of the softer, bigger shadows. I always work big to small. And so I'm building in the soft ambient occlusion first. And then I'm going to put my direct light sources on top of that. So this is like I'm thinking about if you turned off all light sources and there was only blue of the sky lighting this scene and there's just light bouncing around, what would this do? And this is understanding the physics of light this way really helps us to understand how to add believable light into the rest of the scene. So like maybe this is a start. Now, if I turn off my line art, it's going to look blah. It doesn't even look like a painting, but this is starting to get me those pools of light. So
there was a question. Ellie in the chat asked, but how do you know what color to have instead of white? The key component here that you were saying was that it would be a neutral, something that's not too bright, not too dark, something that you can work both up and down from for highlights, and like something brighter and something darker. But how do you choose to go with something that's like a brown like this instead of just a gray or something more bluish,
So I remember, where I learned this, I was painting with a good friend of mine, Tia Cratter, who had been at Pixar way since the beginning. She's at Disney Feature now, but we would paint every week and she would do oil paints and she would always prep her canvas and she would do it one of two ways. It would either be warm or cool. So it'd be like a cool gray or a kind of brown warm like this. And it depended on the subject matter and the mood of what she wanted to give it. So the reason why I'm choosing this brown is because this whole scene has a dominant brown color. My reference has this general tone. So like if you don't know what to do, use reference. And the reference, this is one way to look at this whole thing. I'm going to do a little trick inside of Photoshop and I'm going to show you this fun trick. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to go up to filter, noise median. So what this does is it averages the pixels. So if I have 60 pixels, it's going to take those 60 pixels, add them together, and then give you the average, the median of that, and just kind of blur it together. And this like if I make this smaller, it's going to take out some of the details, but it's not like a Gaussian blur. It's just going to reduce this down to the prime colors. If I keep going bigger, it's basically going to blur it out and go, that's basically the tone I'm looking for. So this is the skill you want your brain to do. Like when I'm painting my first pass, this is what I'm trying to create. The idea of the big blobs of general light and dark. And then I'm going to slowly kind of unblur this and get more details. Like my next stage is to get to like this. And then as I paint more and more details, I'm going to start sharpening the edges, finding those details, sharpening those lines until I get to a final scene that has all the detail in it. So like this is the way my brain wants to work when I'm deciding this. Did that answer the question for you?
I think so. I think the only thing that I could possibly ask you to speak on for that would be what to do if you want to begin working entirely from imagination. Would you recommend that someone has more of a mental library of like the kind of like feel of a scene that they want to go for? Like for this, I would say it's kind of going for like a hazy cozy.
Yeah.
And so that the warmness is what you want in there.
Well, the nice part about digital painting unlike traditional painting, is if I change my mind, I can always just come and make a new adjustment layer and just do a curves and just be like, all right, I want to take the reds down, and I'm going to pull the blues up, and there we go. Now it's cool. And this is an adjustable layer. So like if I make a mistake, I can come back and play with this. Like, let's just keep this layer. I'll come back to this. So I am painting the physics of light first, and I'm just I'm basically building a monochromatic scene, or an analogous palette of the scene that has the physics of soft light first. And then I can go and choose the colors. Like, we could try, like, if we're going to do the warm of the fireplace as a dim thing like this, we could try it. I mean, that's the beauty of digital painting. We can really just explore all kinds of options before we commit to anything. Mm-hmm. It's more like understanding what light does,
For anyone who would be working traditionally and is like, digital painters, they get to cheat. Traditional painters also did this. It's called thumbnail studies. Calm down.
Exactly. And I just remind you that photography made one hell of a stink in the 1850s when photographers, like painters were like, this is the end of us. We're all ruined. No one will ever paint again if you can take a photograph of something. But what happened? Yes, some portrait painters that painted for the elites lost their jobs, but it made an entirely new art form. And now painters started using this to capture scenes that you could never have done before, with like people in motion. Like Degas used photography that we would go, that's classic art. And like all of the other painters of the time were like, Degas, you're ruining things. You're ruining our future. You're destroying us by using the photography. But then he painted things of like people dancing, ballet dancers. You can't hold a ballet pose for 6 hours while you paint it.
No, it's hard to do it for a half a second.
I know. So like, waves crashing, that was something else that was new. You're using these new tools. So digital painting, nothing's cheating when you put story first, because the goal is not to just make a pretty picture. If we're going to do that, might as well just type a prompt and let AI do it for you. If our goal is to tell a story that is from the heart, then there are no rules. This is about the story, and the story is the human side of this.
Mm-hmm. So you've got your neutrals, your neutral base here, and then you built up what you were calling the physics of light, the area where your light sources that you had identified exist, and what they won't be hitting because those areas are occluded from the view of those lights, essentially.
Right. All right, so I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to do it on top of this curve zone so we can add this to it. And I'm going to put it in add mode and linear dodge add in Photoshop. And I'm going to make this a cooler tone, and I'm going to make it kind of dark because it is doing an additive mode. So it's going to brighten. It's not going to darken anything. It's only going to lift. And this is like a light source. So I'm going to paint in some of the light that'll be cool from these windows. Let's say it is daytime out there. So I'm just going to put a pool of cool light back here. And I'm thinking in terms of like I'm not being very specific with this yet. I'm just trying to get a little pool of light, and this will draw attention to our character because it's going to make the character be a silhouette. And we're going to just lighten, and you can make the windows themselves just a little bit brighter. And I can always clean up these lines. I'm just trying to look at the whole space. And I know already that I'm going to want to use that light. Like, let's make it extra bright out those windows. And I'm just trying with scribbly sketches here. And I'm going to use that light to rim the character and really, really make this pop. And like, that's going to be where my high contrast will be, around the edges of this character. That's one light source. And because it's on its own layer, I can play with the intensity of this. And I can just like, bring this back up. Let me do another one. So I'm going to do another layer and put it in add mode. And I'm going to do the same thing. So like, in this reference, there's these warm light sources that are kind of dim, and then there's this strong sunlight. So let me come back here and let's experiment with starting with these deeper oranges. Like maybe these candles are just really dim, but they're a little bit of light over here. I'm going to make my brush bigger and just try, like, what if there is just kind of like a soft glow from those over here. So it'll draw like this warm light. By the way, I did a lot of work and this is going to sound off topic, but I did a lot of work for Lego in my freelance years, and they're a Danish company, and there is a beautiful word in Danish called hygge, spelled Hyggge. And it basically means that feeling of soft, warm, cozy light. It's like wintertime happiness. When things are cold, hoodie weather, you've got a warm cup of something, and you just have soft candlelight into a scene. And it's one of my favorite words because that's what I do in my house all the time. Let's put a little bit of brighter light where those candles will be.
I'm fully with you here. I think anyone who's ever had the chance to light a scene in something like, or for any sort of like camera setup or anything,
Yeah.
it invariably ends up being a thing that you do at home. So all of my lights at home, everything is soft. Everything has like a warm and cool option. And so I'm the worst. I'm intolerable when I play video games. I'm like, the light is
Yeah.
terrible here. It's gonna throw off my performance in the game. So
I
change the whole
know.
environment.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I will play entire games. I bought the game Stray just
Very
because
good game.
it's a beautiful game, but I just
Yes.
like being a cat and wandering around and being like, this lighting is superb.
Dude,
I'm
I
not
got
going
so
on to
many.
the next level.
Yeah, no. I don't blame you. I didn't want to leave when we were supposed to go outdoors and go with like the bugs and everything. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll just stay here in the first little city with all the nice plants. It's fine.
Really nice. Yep.
If you guys haven't, check out Stray. It's very good.
Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm basically focusing on the prime light source first and go the candles and this soft glow. And then I'm getting my brush smaller and I'm starting to do those secondary, like I'm starting to think about materials a little bit, and like this glossy mug, you know, I can use this as a rim light to kind of like build a little bit of shape onto these objects over here coming from that light source, these little owls. And I'm just doing this with scribbles. Again, if I turn off my line art, hopefully you're starting to see something form. It looks like a blurry version of this scene, but I'm doing it in layers. So like this is my candles above the bed. And then I'm going to make another layer to say, let's try fireplace. So if I softly paint over here as another source, and it depends on the mood that I want to give this. How strong are these light sources? How, you know, very soft does this light kind of like fall off from the fireplace? Is it just around the fire itself, or does it really spread far? And this is where an understanding of camera settings and camera exposure and really understanding, you know, doing lots and lots of color studies from real life is going to help you understand what do light sources actually do, because I've studied so many of them. I've done hundreds and hundreds of paintings from life and from real light sources that I can be like, yeah, I can expose this a little bit differently. Like if I want this to be really, really bright, let me give it another layer just to experiment. Like, you know, I could make this really strong if I want to draw more attention to like this cauldron over here, make it really bright, and then make this light be significantly brighter than those candles and really be a strong source into this scene. This is why this early stage is really just like a playful zone to experiment with what light you want to do. This will draw more attention to this side of the room. Is that what I want to do? Or do I want to have a little bit more subtlety? Notice, by the way, I'm doing this all without thinking about the local color at all yet.
That's what I was going to ask. This is perfect. So what is is there a particular reason, and would this be indicative of your normal process of painting on the light first before considering local values?
This is something that's very controversial because I know a lot of people's process is to make hundreds upon hundreds of layers that have, you know, this object, that object, this object, this object, and to figure out what your materials are first and then paint the light on second. And the reason why I don't do this and I don't encourage it is that often people will get lost where their artwork looks flat, like it's a bunch of paper cutouts, and then you've just kind of slapped lighting on top of it. So you have like this, I mean, when we think about television, there's local color-based lighting, and then there's kind of like light-based compositions. And there's a sliding scale between these. So like sitcom television shows use white lights evenly everywhere so that the characters move.
Can you bring up a quick little example? I think probably something like what, The Big Bang Theory is probably a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Big Bang Theory. Let's just look for images, just random images from on set. So when you see the characters on set, notice I see the local colors. This is a very local color focused scene where let's just copy this image and bring it.
Like there's no hard shadows or anything.
Right. You know, so like if I look at the lighting of this scene, Let me just move this up here.
There's actually more of a rim light than I expected on those guys. I'm shocked.
Sometimes they have really strong rim lights. This is why you never see the ceiling in a sitcom, because it's open and there's a whole bunch of light sources everywhere. They want pools of light, but they want them in a way where all those lights are pretty much white, so that, you know, the blue of this shirt, the pink of this one, the green of this one really stands out. The characters pop from the background from those rim lights, but they can move anywhere in this space. This is an economic choice, not so much a creative one. This is actors can do anything they want, and we can produce this show really, really, really fast.
Yeah.
Versus the sliding scale of cinema and cinematography is like light centric. Is the lighting dominates the image. The lighting is the strongest thing, where we can really see the flow of the light first, and the local colors kind of get obliterated by that light. If we start painting with light, to think about the light sources first, it's very easy to add the local colors in next. But we really want to say, I want the cinematic lighting, the power of the cinematic lighting first. Like if I look at the local colors in our reference, that light and the color grade, like I can see some of the colors. I can't quite tell what her dress is. Is it blue? Is it gray? It could be yellow. It could be kind of warm. I don't know. Like I can see a little bit of light on the couch. Like, is the couch gray? Is it blue? Is this blue? This is definitely orange over here. Like I didn't even realize there was a character sitting over here. Like the light really dominates this composition. And like all the local color becomes secondary. So like I can tell that there's color variations in here. Like this looks like green glass. This looks like a warm, kind of planter, but it's less important to the light itself. So let me show you. Let's do a little bit more with the light. I'm just paying attention to the time too. How long does this stream go for?
We typically aim for about 2 hours, but
okay,
honestly, if you had good enough stuff that you really want to keep going through, we can go for longer. That's fine by me. And just so everyone knows, this will be available as a thing that you can watch afterwards, in case you can't be here for the whole thing.
All right, so let's continue with this approach of going, I want to first just put in soft light. I want to say, what is the mood and what am I looking at? What is the geometric composition first? So I want to do my sketches and my loose kind of figuring out of things of the story before I even consider the lighting. And as much as I love lighting, it pains me to say this, but it's the truth. Lighting is the icing on the cake. It is just the final polish, and lighting can't save a bad story. You can make really beautiful lighting and have a really boring scene that doesn't have any story to it. So understanding the basics of good composition geometrically first. How do you have leading lines? How do you do designs that are appealing? How do you put a character into a pose that's really appealing first? And then we put the light over top of it. So then as we're building this, I want to build from a base of like, once we have the geometry, now we're going to build one piece at a time. Things that are easy for your brain to understand. And how many times, I want to ask a question of everybody that's watching this stream. How many times have you watched someone else paint and it just looked like magic and you can't see those steps? Like they're just doing them all at once. And it's almost like they're a printer. Like I've seen so many Instagram photos that are like, they start at the top of the page and they just kind of like work their way down through the page. And they just, suddenly it's this character, it's this actor. And you just like this pencil sketch of somebody and like, tell me when you recognize the character. And like, that is not normal. That is someone showing off. And sadly, I see it as a form of gatekeeping in a way, because it's basically saying my skill is so good, you could never match my skill set. Where I prefer that if you're going to teach it in layers that are like, I can do that. I can make a scribbly sketch. Now I can refine that sketch a little more. Okay, I can just understand ambient light. That I can do. Let's just do ambient light. Forget about colors. Forget about everything else. Let's just paint in soft light first. All right, now we can do light, individual light sources, direct light sources next. And then we can do the bounce lights after that. And we can add in the fog after that. And then we add in the materials and the colors.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it starts to come together.
It's in for those of you who have been watching Proko for a long time, as well as any time that you've been teaching as well, I'm sure, it's an extension of that classic art principle of working big to small.
That is so huge. It's amazing how many times I say that, that big to small, big to small. It's like this principle applies everywhere. I mean, I feel like this applies to psychology. This applies to everything in life. It's just a thing of nature. Like if we look at a human face, if we just start drawing the face at the eyelashes and work your way down the face, your proportions are going to be bad. So like, why don't we start with just simple primitive, like, okay, what is the oval of the head? Let's figure out the head first. And then we're going to go medium and we're going to say eyes, nose, mouth, maybe hair. And then we're going to go small and go pupils, nostrils, teeth, the little wrinkles. Then we're going to go super small, texture of the pores of the skin, the little lines of the hair. We're going to work our way down, and it's so much more approachable if you approach art this way. And the idea of those light sketches to figure out the storytelling and work your way down. We're going to do the same thing with the lights so that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And it's amazing that as you follow this process, this flow, it's going to get cleaner and cleaner and look better and better. And like every time you do a little change, you're going to be like, wow, I didn't think that I could do that. But you can, because it can be a process. I want to rant for just a quick moment, something I've been thinking a lot about. And this is the idea of talent. So often when you see talent versus skill, and I think that these two things, ideally you have both, but natural talent to me is brain patterns. So like, think of this. You're like my partner, she's a word person and she thinks in words. So she can quote a TV show she saw 20 years ago and remember the exact line from that episode of, episode 427 of Friends, right over here. And this is really fun. This is really great. And like my mind doesn't work like that.
Do you remember more of the gist?
I remember the visuals. So like we had a big conversation around, she's like, okay, we're driving down the highway, take exit 271. I'm like, I have never paid attention to the numbers. And she's like, wait, what? Well, then you pay attention to the roads. And like, I don't know the names of the roads either. And it's like, well, then how do you get around?
Like, I remember there's a 7-Eleven over here.
Exactly. It's like, there's the hill and then there's this red building, I'm like, that's how I think. So like, for me, it's all pictures. So I only have to go someplace once and then it's mapped in my brain. Like I build this 3D map. To me, that is the brain pattern that has been established since childhood of just am a visual learner versus a words learner. Like for me, if I go to study a language, I'm toast. Like I just don't remember all the words and the conjugations. Like I used to speak Spanish semi-fluently, but it just was horrible because I just didn't conjugate any words. Cause I was just like, if you did the translation, it'd be like me to run, store to eat, but like it communicates something, but it's like, it's not proper. It's not correct. To me, this is the realm of where talent comes. It's like you have a natural inclination where this makes it a little bit easier for you, but you don't just sit down and suddenly have skill. Like think about crochet. You don't like have a kid sitting in a room as a 3-year-old and all of a sudden, there's yarn on the floor and you come around the corner and suddenly there's a sweater. Like, oops, I have a natural talent for this. Like, no, there's skill involved in this. There's a pattern involved in this. There's a math involved in this to learn how to do this. Now, your brain might like patterns and knots and the rhythms and the counting of crochet or knitting. And then once you learn, like your brain has that natural inclination, and then you take the time to learn the skill. To me, illustration and painting is in the category of crochet. Yeah, it is something that anyone can learn. Some people, they'll learn it faster and easier. Other people will have to struggle with it more. Same with music. You can learn to play a piano even if you are not naturally musically talented. So we have to separate this thing. So many people see artists and they're like, you're just naturally talented and I'm not. It's like, you can learn this.
The thing I think it comes down to is that people so often, they think that someone is naturally an artist. And what that unfortunately so often is it's not that they're naturally an artist, that they just approached something with a certain type of curiosity where they broke something down and recognized those patterns that you mentioned. They saw the structure of something and they otherwise turned something around in their head and worked that out with the tools that they had. Rather than it being that they just innately were able to make a beautiful picture, they just approached a thing with a certain curiosity and thought it through, whether that was in an intuitive way or an intentional way. And that's what we do when we teach art. We just teach people how to break a thing down and observe to then recreate that with their hands.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that we need to remember is nature versus nurture. None of us remember learning the base language. Like, do you remember your first words? I don't.
I have guesses.
Versus
that's it.
like a lot of art is something that is taught by the people around you. Most of us that have been drawing and do this as a profession did this as children before we knew we were learning these skills. We had people in our life that taught us these things before we knew we were even learning.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that to go, part of this is like, you have been trained in this thing. Some people haven't. Some people didn't have people that were training them. And that's just, luck, like
there's some things that like I think that idea stretches out to. There are things that people don't talk about that someone maybe was taught at some point, but there are other just core human skills that a person is given by the people around them.
Yep.
That they do in a specific way because the people around them did those things that way. Yep. But even like the way that you wrap up after you use the bathroom, like we don't talk about it, but everyone does it in a different way because it's just a core thing that you learned way back in the day.
Here's one that I got referred to recently that like I've never thought about that. When you pull a carton of eggs out and you're gonna do some scrambled eggs, do you pull from one side and work your way all the way down, or do you pull from both sides and work to where it's balanced, where the leftover eggs are in the center?
That's an insane one. I when they go in the fridge, it goes in slotted like diagonally, or not diagonally, vertically, and then I pull from the closest towards the back.
See, like nobody.
But this would be a function
talks about.
Yeah, but like it would be a function of how you place the thing in there, also, But certainly, people do some insane things. Opening like how you peel a banana,
Right.
That's the one that everyone learned a new one for a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, once somebody told me, to take it from the other end, to pinch the other end.
Yeah,
I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. That's pretty awesome to be able to like, it just changed the way that I do everything. Okay, while we've been chatting, I've been painting a little bit more detail into this cool layer. And I'm thinking not just about direct light source of like light here. I'm thinking about just a little bit of rim light. This is the secondary light sources that are coming from, like the windows down into, onto the dragon, onto the table, the little rim lights from those candles. I'm thinking about the shaping of these objects. And I'm just looking at the general balance. Let me come back to this layer. What's really nice is if I paint my ambient light by itself and put these different light sources on their own layers on top, I can come back to this curves layer and everything still works because those warm lights are added on top. They're additive, which means the warmth is just being added. So like if I want the scene to be very cold, I can just change the color of my ambient, or if I want it to be warm and cozy, I can just make it brown. Like painting in layers like this is such a powerful way to play with this. Like maybe I make it cool and then I take that whole layer and I take its opacity down, like somewhere in between. This gets it more in that gray zone. I can play with this. This is such a great way to just explore the cinematography. Let me do something else. I'm going to keep the warm tone, but let's add in secondary light, very strong secondary light. So I have built things to say, this is the cool of the sky. These are the candles. These two together are the fireplace. What if we do one that is sunlight? Like let's put some direct sun. So this is going to be my direct sun. And I'm going to make this really, really strong. And I will paint this in to say, what if the sun is coming through these windows and it's like blasting the edge of this character? Let's make this a little bit warmer. Maybe it's hitting the floor like right here. So we've got like a pool of direct sunlight that is coming in this way. Maybe it shines, like the light's going to come down like this. So I'm going to paint in the direct light first, make this really, really strong sun. And it's hitting part of that table and hitting just a little bit of this character, like a strong rim. Let's make that even brighter. Let's make that where it clips. Like we are exposed for the shadows. So anything that is that direct light source is really, really strong. And now I'm going to do something I'm going to call sun fog. And I'm going to make a soft sun fog. Yep. So this one is also in add mode. I'm going to have lots of add layers, and I'm going to just bring a real soft light source. So I'm going to a soft brush. I'm going to take its opacity down, and I'm just going to try to give that feeling of it's so bright it's going to light the air in the room. Let's make it kind of warm in tone, and it's
So
just going to fill in.
So the thing that you're doing here, there are certain things that you would take away that, like from looking at this, the thing that it implies about the scene, it does imply something physically.
Yep.
So in that situation, if you have something that's hazy in that way, there's either going to be like some moisture in the air or a particulate like dust in some way. It makes something feel typically to people cozy.
Yep. It's funny how much haze machines and smoke machines are used in cinema.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes it's just too much. It's like, are these people smoking? Are they all going to die of cancer? What's going on? Is it going to be black mold everywhere next week? You know, but
yeah, but it does look good. You know, it's when you can see the wisps when they just like moved the haze around. That's the part that kills me.
Well, what it does is it really gives you separation of layers. Like the black in the foreground now becomes a framing element because there's less fog.
And darker, like by its very nature, there's less there's less softness that's being introduced by that haze.
Exactly. So this will tell my eye, like I'm thinking about what am I communicating? When we say story, this is not just the story of who these characters are. I can say the story of the space. What is the space? I have a 2-dimensional screen and I'm trying to convey 3-dimensional information about this scene. The fog separates the layers to tell me how far into the room this goes, and that this hallway is much farther back because the darks get washed out by that little bit of fog. Even the character in the foreground, the amount of sunlight, like I'm not seeing the sunlight. I'm barely seeing the direct sun, but I can tell what time of day it is, and that they're in a house that's rather dark and there's sunlight coming in. Like this to me feels like it's early morning, you know, implied light sources of what's happening outside. So in our scene, we can do the same thing. Maybe it's a little too green, you know, with my fog here. So I'm going to just go to my hue saturation and I'm going to just shift it more towards a little bit more warm here. I'm going to do the same with my direct sun because it's in add mode. And I'm going to just shift it a little bit further away from green, a little bit more towards warm. So it feels more like warm sunlight. And now I'm going to do the big button, and this one will be sun bounce. Because that light is so incredibly strong, I'm now going to stay with that big soft brush, and I'm going to think about this little spot on the floor is now a new light source, and it is going to explode light into the scene. And so I'm just going to paint extra bounce light into this scene coming from that as a direction. And this is going to warm up the entire room. My brush is at 21% opacity. I'm going to make basically a light source that is coming from below. So anything that is facing the floor is going to get extra light. So this is going to make a new light source that is looking at the floor, right? Let me just kind of point this out. So basically we have, let me do this brighter. This area right here is a soft light source that is going to be shining up and exploding light out because it will diffuse the light. When light hits stone of a floor, it's going to scatter out into the room, and we can really make this light source very strong. So I want to use that bounce light as my source of light. So I'm going to really explode that light. Let me make it a little bit more red and saturated, and it's just going to like extra overexposed. Maybe I don't put quite so much saturation in it, but I want it to feel like
a little bit bigger as well. I think we're not using the reference too much at the moment. Thank you.
All right. So it's funny because I always like to paint as a thumbnail. Actually, I'm going to show you another trick that I love to do. I'm going to do arrange workspace, new window 4. And this is a Photoshop feature where I can have 2 versions of the same file. And this one I zoom back. You can use, there is a navigator in Photoshop as well, but I like this because I can control the zoom level. So I have one that's as a thumbnail, so I can be paying attention to this down here and making sure that the whole scene holistically looks good. And then I can still be zoomed in when I'm painting here. So I want there to be just a tremendous amount of warm bounce that's kind of spilling from that spot. And I'm going to use this onto the character. It's going to come from below and really light the character. And it's going to just spill into everything into the scene. So it's going to come way back here onto this book. Let me just start really soft first, and then I'll clean up those lines. But it's just going to spread light from that kitchen out into the space, up onto the walls. This will make the whole thing feel happy, daytime, exposed, like it'll be a little bit more high key. And the term high key just means that you're exposed for the brights, and it's just like really bright. It's a dominant bright image, not high contrast, high key. There's a difference. Low key means you are balanced, in the shadows, where like the most of the image is actually pretty dark.
Where basically like where the most detail exists.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, so all of that, the light that's coming from that window, does that currently exist on one layer here?
Yeah.
Can you turn that on and off and show how the other lights existing in there, like they do, it still feels lit?
So I have it on 3 layers. So like,
and it's because of the way that you painted in the other ones, like those other light sources in there.
Yep.
It still feels realistic as you turn each of those lights off, basically.
Yep. And because they're in layers, I can take their opacity down and really play with the balance of these lights. We had something really cool many, many years ago when I was working on animated films. I mean, part of the reason why I paint like this is because this is how I technically had to light scenes before there was fancy tools. So if we rewind time to go 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was lighting the very first films that I worked on, like working on The Incredibles, we didn't have any bounce light. We didn't have lumen. We didn't have global illumination. We didn't have all these fancy technical tools where you put in the sun and then it just bounced light into the scene. We had to place the sun, and then we had to place another light that was bouncing and soften that, and then another light on the wall, and another light, another light, another light, another light. And you progressively make them dimmer and progressively change the color tone of these lights to craft exactly what you were looking at. So a scene like this might have 300 or 400 light sources in order to craft it, and it took a lot of hand crafting. So when I paint, I like to think like this, to go, what is the direct light? What is the fog? What is the bounce? One piece at a time, because we do this with compositing, advanced 3D software for compositing. We do this too, so that we can then in post take all these layers and rebalance it. We're basically building my paint as if you're a compositor, which is a different way of thinking. So traditionally, this is not very easy, to think this way, because there aren't layers quite the same. There aren't add layers. So if you're going to do this with oil paints, I'm really sorry. What I would suggest is that you paint digitally first. And this is what a lot of professional traditional painters do, is that they explore the possibilities digitally. Then they have this as a plan on their iPad, and then they translate this to oil paint or to acrylics or to gouache or whatever they're going to do. So
I have a few questions from people kind of built up here.
Yep.
All right. So John Doe had asked, would this kind of process, like this particular kind of process that you're doing here, is this more in your 101, 102, or 103 course?
The process of painting itself is in the 102 course. The building of layers like this is in the 102. So the 101 is learn to copy. Just like, here's an image, paint that image. Learn to recognize this color versus that color. Learn to be able to accurately say, like, that is a desaturated warm, not a blue. And learn to just see. The 102, I talk about this process. The 103, I would say we're going to talk about drawing our eye and doing, like I get into advanced color theory, and I get into like why would we light these scenes? Why would we turn on that light or dim this down? How do we light characters in a way that you can understand their shape and form? So we do character lighting, and then we do environment lighting, and then we do cinematic multi-shot lighting as well, and painting of color keys for sequences. In the 103, like it's really about visual storytelling in the movie side of it, because that's most of my experiences in the movie industry. Like I worked at Pixar, I worked for Ubisoft, I've worked for Lego, I've worked for Disney, I've worked for Sony, I've worked for a whole bunch of different companies, but it's all been focused around the visual storytelling side of this. So I've worked in live action television, I worked on Fallout, I worked on Westworld, I worked on a bunch of things as a lighting director, and really thinking about these subjects of like, how do we light this scene in a way that's going to advance the story? And painting of color keys is really my passion.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I've got a bunch more here.
Yeah.
All right. So they had asked, I can't find the exact person here. They had asked if you usually draw the character or the background to fit the character or the character to fit the background. Let's say if you were starting from fresh and you have no motivation from any sort of thing that you're doing for work. How would you approach this typically? I think both are good. Both have their strengths and weaknesses. But for you, Jeremy Vickery.
I mean, when I think of stories, if I'm going to go towards general art direction and not just light, like if we're broadening this to design as well, I want to just say, give me the essence of the story. I want the essence of who are these characters. And I wanted to design my characters based off of first their body type to say who they are. And what is the style of the project? Like, I really need to understand, is this really playful and stylized? Is this realistic? Is this going to be live action with live action characters? You know, there's a lot of different design choices. Like I want those big questions first. Give me the script, give me the screenplay. Let me read it. And then let me talk with the director to say, what is your intention? What is these characters supposed to make you feel when you see them? Like, this is an interesting topic because I think a lot about, as artists, especially as we move into this age of AI trying to take over our jobs, we need to expand our knowledge so much wider to say, study psychology, study, the way people move. Like, have you ever had in a work setting where you have to do subconscious bias training? And, like, you realize that there has been racism in your family that you didn't realize was there, and your intentions are good, but you say something subtly that's going to offend somebody who comes from a different class. And it's really important as a human to do this, but it's also fascinating as an artist to study this, to say, what are your subconscious triggers? To say, if you see somebody, let's say you're a 5 foot tall, small, skinny person, and you're in a parking lot of a store and you see this huge person in the background and they're wearing a leather jacket with a bunch of spikes and they're hanging in the shadows and you see a glow of a cigarette around them. There is no judgment as to whether they are a good or bad person. You shouldn't judge them as a person, but you are naturally going to have judgments based on, like, they could be a potential threat.
Yeah, it's the threat assessment that's built into us as survival instinct.
Right. And so as artists, I think it's important to study these things to say, what causes people to feel these emotions outside of the moral aspect of judging somebody, based on their skin tone or their clothing. Like, man, there was a guy that I worked with at Pixar who was awesome. He was really cool, but he was also super goth. And so, like, they went to Brigham Young University to go give a talk in Utah.
And BYU is not going to be receptive at first.
They called the police on him because they just judged his tattoos and his piercings and everything, thinking that he had kidnapped these girls. And, like, this is just a cultural class of understanding. He's the sweetest person ever, really intelligent, really kind. Like, don't judge a book by its cover. But as an artist, learn to look at the things that people judge and build that into your storytelling. Because when you see this character, the first time you see it, you are going to have bias as to who this character is. Now, there are things that you can judge that are not innate. Like, I can't change the color of my skin. I can't change my ancestry. I can't change any of these things. Those are things that are outside of my control. They're just happenstance of history.
Yes, immutable characteristics.
But there are other things. I can change my hairdo. I can change my clothing. I can change, things about myself that will also enhance that. So we want to do this to our characters. We want to evoke are they safe? Are they scary? Are they playful? Are they bubbly? Are they round? Like, when I think of the design of The Incredibles, when you look at the main characters from The Incredibles, if you've seen that, you look at, like, Violet. Violet is a teenage girl, and they made her skinny and they put her hair over her face. They gave her superpowers were invisibility and force fields. Like, they are taking the essence of what it feels like to be like a 15-year-old girl and just say, stay out. I'm really cautious. where Dash's design is this little ball of energy with a big head, and he's just running.
He's got the little like the peak, the swoop in the back, and implies speed and everything.
Right. And then the mom is Elastigirl, and she's just all kinds of stretchy because she has to hold the family together.
Mhm.
Those are all very intentional design choices from a story standpoint. So I would say I want to start with the story, then the characters, then the environment. Environment will support everything else. If you go watch that other video on my YouTube channel, I'm talking about visual storytelling through environment, the latest video that I posted this week. And this is using real estate apps to look at stories that you can find in weird places. Like you look at this house, this one's really poor, this one's really wealthy. There's some crazy things that people do with their money that just is like, wow. There's some, there's some sad stories, but there's also some extravagant stories. And I want to use that. I want to tap into that and build my world. Like in this scene that we're painting, I put these little monster slippers. That's funny. All the little things of like there's skulls and teddy bears. That is visual storytelling. I very intentionally built those things to help the story.
Mm-hmm. So if you guys do want to find out some more things about the way Jeremy approaches some like staging a scene, talking about a scene, and doing light in particular, you guys can go over to this link here for the thing that the course that he said would most apply to what he's doing here, Painting Light 102, but you can also get Jeremy's 103 course, which was just recently released. All of his courses right now are 20% off. Get them. That's pretty much the steepest discount that we give. And if you guys decide to get all three, because you know that you're going to want all three of them, you will also get a bundle discount as well for getting all of those at once.
Yeah. Yeah, and it helps support me to continue to help. I also mentor people one-on-one.
A lighting mentor.
Yeah, I literally do. I do that. So like people that want to learn and need, like especially people that are untraditional in their thinking, people with ADHD, people that need extra help. I choose, certain people to help them one-on-one grow their art and build a portfolio that'll get them ready for the industry or whatever they want to do. So yeah, that's at lightingmentor.com. So I'm just putting my own little plug out there.
Yeah.
We're talking about things. Yep.
I'm going to put that on screen here for you guys. So what are the next steps in what you've got here? You said that you typically lay in the lights. So you identified your light source. You expanded on a couple of those. In some ways, the candles on the right side of screen, the light source from the sky in the middle, and a little bit of stuff that you did on the left side from that fireplace.
Yep.
Are we close to where you would typically start to lay in local values, or there's still some more? Okay.
That's exactly it. If I'm happy with this, see what I want to do is I want to play with the lights first. To me, this feels cozy, comfortable. Like I would want to go into this house. This is really cool. It's got a warm little fireplace. There's a really soft bed. So yeah, the next thing is going to be local colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these layers that I've made so far, and I'm going to put them into a group. And I'm going to duplicate the group in case I want to go back. And then I'm going to do collapse layers. So now I basically took all of that lighting and put it into one single layer, which will allow me, so like I can take, this is my sketch layer. I can now blend some of these colors and I can build some of the local colors. Maybe I'll take my sketch layer and I'm going to bring down its opacity a little bit because I don't want to rely on lines. I want my end illustration to feel lit like it's a three-dimensional world. Like if I look at the painting I did before, I don't have any line art on top of this. This is all just pure illustration, and hopefully the lighting feels good here. It's kind of similar in a lot of ways with the cool light back there. I don't have any sunlight in this, and my tones are a lot cooler, and I don't have a character in this. We're building kind of a brand new scene. So let's talk about. I'm going to not save that one. Let's just send that away because once we have our inspiration, I don't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find local colors.
And the reason that you say that you don't need the inspiration anymore is because you have all of the information that you need here to then extrapolate what the light will do.
When I had my reference, that was just a starting point for a palette. A palette, an atmosphere, a time of day. I like this palette. I like what I have, and I want to be original with this. So I'm just going to pull up only what I need and then throw that away so that I'm not copying directly. I want to be able to do the math of lighting in my mind so that whenever I want to change the lights, and once I found that like that's the balance, then I'm not copying anymore. Like there's there's a theory that I talk about in the 102 course, which is extraction. And this is the idea, like, I think as artists, we first start with copying. That is the best place. But if you put in your portfolio figure drawing and you put in, you know, paint studies and you put in color studies, nobody cares about that. That is you copying. That's like you playing someone else's song and then calling yourself a composer. Like, no, I want you to have your own original ideas, but you start with copying. You play other people's music before you start writing your own. So you get the principles of the patterns, the music theory. When you're looking at the lighting theory and the cinematography theory until you can do it yourself. Now you're composing your own scenes, and we can extract. There's something in between like using reference. Like, I'm going to take the light from this. I'm going to take the pose from this. I'm going to take the camera from this. And I'm going to extract things to make something brand new where I don't have to do it 100% out of my head. It's not like you copy, and then all original with no reference. Like, reference can be used in a way that you're not stealing anything, but you're learning from those things and taking the essence of those things and applying it to your art.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's come back to this and say local colors. There's two different ways that I can do local colors, and I go back and forth. I could, so here's the hard method. I'm going to show you the hard one, and I'm going to show you the easy one. And the easy one comes with some downsides too. So the hard one is with color relativity here. So if I come into this new sketch, and let me go back to my regular paintbrush here. If I select a color, say right here on this color, if I want this bed to be blue, I can use color relativity, and this is something that I talk about in the courses as well, to say in this very warm scene, if I just, if I want to say blue bed, I could just change this color to blue and paint, but this is going to feel too strong. This is going to remove the lighting. So instead, if I undo and I select this color, and I just say, let me just desaturate that. Now, if I paint this in, this is a blue color. Like, see how it feels blue, but it's in that light. So now I can just make a darker version of this. And because all of the colors are warm, this is going to feel like a blue blanket in the midst of this scene. And I can just use that as a starting place. And now I've changed the local color. So like if we want to make, we can rotate around the color wheel. So let's say we want this fur on the top. Right now, it's just kind of warm. Like, what if we want this to feel like it's made out of grass? I could pull all the way to green and paint green, and that's going to look harsh, and it's going to look really too strong. But what if I select that color that's already been found, and then I just shift towards green and desaturate slightly, and now it's going to feel green, but with the same colored lights in the scene. Using color relativity, I can make this feel green, but also make it feel integrated into the warm lights that I've already found.
There was a free video that you had done with us. Looks like it was about a year ago now, which is nuts to think. I've linked that here on like in the chat, and I'll make sure and include that in the description as well for anyone who's watching after the fact. Where you were talking about, like you said, color relativity. That video is called "The Secret to Painting the Right Color." And so you were talking about how in a scene, the color that something feels like isn't necessarily directly that color. If you were to just go through and color pick it, it's something that is implied by the color relationships around, or the relationship to the colors around them.
Like if I look at this scene and I now color pick from it, your brain is going to say this is blue. But if I select it, it's orange. On the color wheel, it is a desaturated, it's really gray. It's, there's a power in these gray tones where you're still in a warm palette. So this is a cold, warm color, which sounds really weird. It is a desaturated orange that now looks blue because the whole scene is blue. All right, now I'm going to show you the powerful trick of a different approach. And this is to use curves. And again, this is not something you can do traditionally. You can definitely do this digitally. Procreate does not have this on an iPad very easily. Adjustment layers. Photoshop has this. Krita has this. Clip Studio Paint has this. On the iPad, really quickly talking about tools. When I paint on the iPad, I just learned that there's a new one called Art Studio Pro that I started painting with. And this does have adjustment layers. Let me show you what an adjustment layer is. So I'm going to do a color grade on a layer. So I'm going to go down here in the layers palette, and this little half circle here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to say curves. Now, if you're not familiar with curves, basically what we're looking at is there is this line here. The right side are the brights and the left side are the darks. And this thing in the middle is called a histogram. And I'm seeing all of the values in this scene. So most of my scene, there's very little pure black. There's very little pure white. There's a lot in this low range. So if I take the brights down, it's going to take all the brights and darken the image. If I take the darks up, it's going to lighten the whole image. And if I grab in the middle, it's going to leave the brights bright and the darks dark, and it's just going to darken overall and add contrast. So this is a powerful tool to learn. What I'm going to do with this is I can change. This is right now on RGB, so it's going to control contrast overall. But if I want to say, let's make the table a brown color, I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, I'm going to take some of the blues, bring the blues down a little bit, and I'm going to take the greens, bring the greens down a little bit. And there's a mask that comes with this. So with this mask, I'm going to click on the mask and I'm going to fill with black. So on my keyboard, if I'm on a Mac, Option Delete, it is going to fill the mask with the foreground color, which is black. And while I'm on the mask, if anything that I paint is going to have that adjustment to it. So if I come and I paint the table, it is taking the blue out. So I'm basically adjusting the lights that are there, and it's not just adding a single color. It's not colorizing the image. It is taking the existing lighting and just taking the blues and the greens out a little bit to shift that color. And then I can come back and click on this and adjust. Like I could make this a little bit darker. Maybe maybe there's too much reds. I can bring back a little bit of the greens into this. And now I've just tinted something a slight color. And I can, like if I want this chair to be red, let's make a new adjustment layer, do a curves, and just say I'm going to pull down the middle of the greens and fill this black. And here we go. Like I've just made a magenta chair just by, oops, I switched my brush accidentally. So I can really quickly play with local colors, but notice it's not affecting the lighting. It's not like it's just adding pink on top. It is, like if I were to do this and paint back here, let's say his mug is pink. It's not affecting the lighting very much at all. There is some degradation that's happening when you were doing a curves layer, but this is a really, really fast way to say anything that I want to be a different color, I can use these curves, and it's a starting point. Like this is I will have to correct highlights because specular reflections do not pay attention to local colors. Advanced topic, but the idea of an object bounces a color because it absorbs light. Like a red ball is absorbing all the blue and the green light, and it's only bouncing red because of the material property. But the specular highlights on a red ball will be the color of the actual lighting. So you can have a blue highlight on top of a red ball, but you won't have blue diffuse light on a red ball. So now it's just taking the time to go through here and say, what objects do I want? Like, let's say I want something to be white. So I'm just going to like brighten overall, and maybe I will add just a little bit of blue to it. And any objects that I want, let's just say like I want this mug to be white. And let's increase the, like I can just kind of brighten this up. Maybe the pages themselves are kind of like a whiter color as well. So I'm just going to very, very quickly go through this scene. Maybe these little cards on the table are also white as a starting point. Maybe I'll just find something else. Maybe this character's beard is white. We give it some skin tones. So this is my quick and dirty, fast approach for like the skin a little bit darker. Let's add some reds into this. Let's take some of the greens out and a little bit of the blues out, and paint some skin tones onto this character.
We've got two questions about this in here. So first, Pencil Pages asked, is the thing on the right called a histogram or colors channel?
So the thing on the right down here is the mask. This is the control of the curves. So the histogram is this gray part in here. So
it's that type of display.
It's the display.
Style.
If you have a camera, you can display a histogram that shows you, it's an interpretation of the entire values. It's looking at the values of the image. So like if I switch over to the reds, notice the histogram changes. So the histogram is showing these are all my values of reds. So there's almost no dark reds in this scene. you're just seeing this is a representation of all of the pixels. Like in the 3/4 brightness zone of the reds is really strong. Here's the greens, here's the blues, there's, kind of mid blues, and then this is the overall image. Does that make sense? It's a lot of technical terms we're talking about.
Yeah, it's something that you won't have to think about too much in there, but the histogram, like you said, basically there you can see the color styles in there. A histogram can be used for mentioning or like describing many different types of information. So it's just one way of interacting with this thing. And then John Doe had also asked, does the local color process change when you have to light a scene in multiple ways? Like if you had to do a nighttime pass on this, now the ambience and lights are all cool. Does he have to repaint it?
Okay. So depending on the colors, like I can just make an overall curves to the whole scene and just say like, let's just color grade the entire thing to say, what if we pull the reds down and we take some of the greens out of this, and let's add some blues into this. All these colors should kind of follow. Mm-hmm. We've ruined our fireplace by doing this. Like, I really want to make my lighting choices before I do the local colors, if possible, because now I've taken the fire and I've pulled the warmth out of the fire. I should really do this. Like, actually, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the layer here. Let's turn on. I'm going to take all of these color adjustments and go back to this group, because this group actually has all of the lights in it. So why don't I take these adjustments, these ones, and I'm going to move them down, and I'm going to put this right above the ambient light. So now I have all my cool lights, but I've done these color adjustments first in the ambient light. It's just, we have all these light sources on. So if I want to do my color adjustments earlier, this is a way to do it. Have everything split into layers. Let's make I'm going to do one more for the bed. Let's make the bed blue. If I do it on my base layer here, so I'm going to take my reds down. I'm going to take my greens down a little bit. I'm going to take my blues up a little bit. And I'm just going to paint where the blanket is. Actually, this is going to be a really great test, because if I look at these values, I have taken what is already there and I have shifted it. But if we look at the actual colors, if I come back to a brand new layer that is just a paint layer, so let's just make a new layer, and I go and I select that color. What color is that? It's a warm color. So it didn't add blue, it just sucked the warmth out to make it look blue. So if I have my adjustment layers down above my just ambient, yes, everything will update. So like I can say, let's take the whole, let's take the whole scene and shift it cold.
John Doe said, dude, over here on Team Procreate, we can't do any of this. What the heck? I sympathize. I really like carrying my iPad around to do a bunch of stuff, but every time I can't just do, even like drag out to do a gradient on something in Procreate. I can't just add an outline on something. I don't have blending modes, basically.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I mean,
blending styles, rather.
Yeah. These are for digital tools, and for, like if I want to paint fast and I want to find lighting, these are such powerful tools. But they come at a technical cost.
Yeah. Okay, and so it's not that you can't still do this on iPad, to be clear. There are programs that will do this out there. It's just Procreate. And some of those are also even free tools, I don't want anyone to think they have to have Photoshop.
Let me show you how to do this in Procreate. So let's come back to this image. If I've painted this all and I have to merge the layers in Procreate, this is how I would make a mask. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to go image, adjust curves. And you can do this in Procreate. And you can say, all right, I just want to take the reds down to make something look, maybe the greens down slightly. You hit OK, and then you make a mask, or you erase away. So it is a destructive edit. You don't have ability to go back and change this, but I can make a mask and then paint back where this object is that I want to make a different color. And this is how you would do this in Procreate. You can't come back and adjust those curve settings because it's gone. So it's basically a brand new layer that has your adjustment on it. But the moment that you get out of your curve setting, it bakes it into the pixels. So it's possible to do this, but you're going to have to like duplicate layers, remerge, duplicate, merge, duplicate, merge. That's why I love adjustment layers so much. And most of the time I'm in painting, I'm in Photoshop just because I have so much more control.
So Jeremy, we have 20 minutes left on the clock of the time that we had initially laid out. We can go past that, but it's up to you on what you want to try to get in this last 20 minutes if you want to stick to that time.
Okay, so now what I would do at this point, once I've established what my lighting is, kind of from a third far away zoomed out view, if I'm happy with my general composition, I'm happy with my colors, now it's time to do the refining process. And this to me is the thing that, you know, like I can do this color key process relatively fast. Like if I wasn't talking about it, I could fly through a scene in maybe 10, 15 minutes and get it to this point where I'm just kind of figuring out my lights. The good thing about speed painting like this and learning to paint fast is that you can come to a director and you can show 5 different renditions of what the light could be. Just like we could try this, or we could try this, or we could try this. And like, here's a cool version, night version, day version. Here's with lots of fog. Here's with no fog. We can really experiment with things as long as you can say, blur your eyes a little bit and just see the potential of what this can be. Because right now, if I turn off the sketch, it's kind of blobby. You almost have to have a little bit of faith that this is going to be pretty in the end. Like this is not a polished illustration, but it is the basis for the way color keys are generated for films. Like often we don't actually go much further than this for a lighting artist to know the direction that they go. So like if you look up Pixar color keys, I worked at Pixar for many years, you'll see that they're not much more refined than this, but they really tell me about the atmosphere, the colors, the balance, the brightness of the light sources, you know, and I can go build my 3D scene and build something from there. But if I was going to make an illustration is different than concept design. Concept design is the instructions for the final product. Illustration is the final product. So let's say we're going to turn this into an illustration. Where would I go next? And this is where I take all of those layers and I do, like, again, I'll just take these and merge them. And now I'm going to zoom in and go one piece at a time and pick the colors that I've already found and sharpen up these lines. So like at this point, I'm going to switch into full painting mode like I would if this was traditional to say, well, I'm going to add a little bit more core shadow and a little bit more saturation in the shadow to this side of the face. And I'm going to start thinking about the actual local objects. I didn't determine the color of the outfit. Let's make it red. So I'm going to just shift it red and darker and just say like it's wearing some sort of red-ish jacket. And I'm just zooming in. I like to zoom in to 100%. Keeping that second window there. And if I can make it look good at 100% zoom, let's pick this color and just say this is a brighter red in the sun. This is coming back to the traditional painting techniques of just knowing what these colors are. This is how I would kind of like go and finish this painting. Maybe there's darkness in here. So I just keep painting and I start thinking about like there's a little bit more bounce from the floor under the chin and under the mouth and maybe under the ears. There's a little bit of bounce light, but I'm just going to take the time to refine all these details until I have the final painting. So I'm going to start thinking about specular highlights. Like I was thinking that this helmet would be some sort of like metal, like a warrior's helmet. So maybe on a helmet like this, there could be some strong reflective highlights because it's made out of metal. As I'm starting to really think about materials, this is a deep, deep subject to really get further into. But again, these are things that why this 2-hour talk doesn't compare to the 22 hours of my courses.
Yeah.
You know, like the details of like how to see and know how to refine each of these things.
Yeah, there's a reason. So I think everyone's kind of made the classic mistake when, let's say, they're trying to make something in a comic book style or whatever. A way of shading something in comics is to have large areas of black. That's your shadow. that it's called a spot black. But then if you go and put a big old area of a spot black somewhere that's supposed to be like the wrinkle in a shirt, for example, it means something to have that big area of black. When you go and have another area where you try to put your highlight on something, and you have this really bright highlight that's this hard, like defined edge on it, that implies something. Typically, that pushes someone towards more thinking that it's something shiny. That's reflective. The different materials will reflect light and absorb light in different ways, and it's something really important to keep in mind when you're rendering on top of something.
Yeah, I think the key thing for me is I have found a palette of colors, and as I come in to refine these final shapes, I'm using that as my guide. I'm trying not to pick brand new colors that I haven't already refined. I'm trying to use this as my guide map to polish the rest of the image, using those principles of understanding materials, understanding the light. Like maybe there's a little bit more warmth in the bounce under the face that'll just make it a little bit more appealing, and adding some of these colors based off of my knowledge of light. But I'm doing this where instead of approaching the whole scene, I'm approaching just one kind of topic at a time and adding those colors in this way. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Very much so. Which it was pretty succinct, considering this was like a personally developed thing. Sometimes it's hard to kind of codify that and present to somebody else.
So I'm thinking about the light that's hitting from the ground over here and bouncing back up onto the character's leg. And like I'm doing the micro bounces now. Like there's going to be a little bit of rim light onto the character's arm. I can use that bounce light as a way to give extra shape onto the character. Let's give some darker hair back there, some dark into the shadows. Hopefully, as we go, I turn off my sketch layer. Hopefully it's starting more and more to feel like a three-dimensional object. And because I painted this on one layer, I can come back and use a mixer brush, which is a blender. And I have a very particular settings in Photoshop for how this works, but I can come and I can smooth out some of these areas and start refining the three-dimensional shape. Like in the end, I want to be able to not have line art. I want it to feel like a full three-dimensional scene. So I'm going to do my blending and do everything to smooth this out and make it feel three-dimensional.
There is a technique that some people do where they'll have that line art on top of everything for a good long chunk of the process. But then towards the end of it, they kind of just flatten it into it and kind of smudge the lines into the work to imply some sort of like ambient occlusion areas and things like that. Do you find yourself using this?
No, I don't. Because I find that you get these areas of gray. I have no problem with that approach, but I really, really don't like line art myself. So it's not a technique that I use. I respect it. I respect people who use line art. Like I can respect comics and be like, that's really awesome. It's just not my passion. I've worked too long as a 3D lighting artist, and I'm just like, I want it to feel like it's a full polished illustration with every single little detail, and that I don't need lines, because you don't see lines in real life. There are no such thing as lines on the edges of my face. Your face, what we're seeing is just light. So I always want to make it as lit as possible,
Yeah. Hashtag lit.
Hashtag lit. Exactly. So, but I mean, I can respect the idea. Every time that I've accidentally painted on my line layer, I'm like, well, now it's a part of the background. I have to blend it in, but I see those lines that I'm like, but that's not actually a line that I want in my scene.
Yeah.
And at this point, I can make different details. Yep.
I have two questions here that we can get in. I'm assuming from the pace that you've taken here that you do want to end at the 2-hour mark.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
that sounds great to me.
Okay. So I have two questions that I want to get in here at the end. So Carlos Rue was asking the age-old question. When do you know when to stop in one phase and move on to the next? Is it something that you're going to have to discover on your own? Do you go over this in your courses, or do you think that's more of a personal journey?
Well, what I do in my courses is I give you timers.
That's a good one.
I try to train you like when you think about figure drawing, one of the worst parts of starting figure drawing is those 30-second poses. You're just like, why is the instructor making me do 30-second poses? This sucks. Just give me 20 minutes and I can paint something so much more believable if you give me 20 minutes. But what that timer does for you is it makes you pay attention to the most important thing, which is the energy and the shape in the pose and the gesture, rather than getting stuck in going for the eyelids and then going like, get the big proportions. You have 30 seconds. Go. Look at the line of action. Look at the spine, the shoulders, the hips. Get that in there first. And then that energy is just going to stay in there if you learn to do that fast. So in my courses, I get people doing full color studies of classic paintings, and you have 15 minutes. Go. Copy it. And there's trees and there's people and there's props and there's all kinds of things in there that you only have 15 minutes. So if you can learn to paint fast, then you can learn to see the potential of an image like this and say, okay, well, if I'm a professional, if I'm working in a studio, like I want to base this off of professional work. How much time would you have to paint a full illustration? And you might, like, for me professionally, 1 day for a final polished illustration is a long time.
Yeah. That's a long time.
That's a long time. Like you might only have like, okay, it's noon. I want to see your thoughts on 6 different ways to paint this scene. Show me at 4 o'clock. Like, you better be fast at this. So it's like, I don't have time to waste, building this scene too much. But then sometimes I have illustrations that I want to polish. Like, I really want this to be an illustration and I want to take that extra time. So for me, 1 day is usually my time limit, where I know people that can spend 30, 40, 50, 60 hours on a single painting, noodling with hundreds of layers, and they get lost. And then they're really upset when they've wasted that time, versus if you can learn to do this in 2 or 3 hours, you'll be much less worried when an art director is like, no, it's nighttime.
Yeah. And then and you also, like, I think the thing that I can take away from what you said there was, it depends on the situation, like basically your use case when you're having to do the work. And a lot of the things that you have shown in your process over the course of this stream and everything else that I've seen you ever show in any of your videos or anything, is that you set yourself up for success and that modularity when you do need it. And you choose the stages when you do lock it in for each of those versions and iterations that you have.
Yes.
So again, it's determined by the situation and then just planning ahead, or giving yourself like knowing the stages where you don't have to have locked something in yet and you get to be loosey-goosey with it. Do them in order.
It was interesting. I went freelance for a while, and one of the things that really helped me with freelance, it's like if I'm working at a studio, we all know we learn to see the potential of something right away. Like, we can watch a story reel and we don't have to see it lit and colored and, beautiful. Like, we know that eventually everything's going to be in the final painting and it, or the final rendered frames, and it's going to look really nice. But a lot of freelance clients don't see that. So I actually built myself a little example sheet to go, this is the starting phase. Here's former projects that I did. And here's my scribbly sketches where we figure things out. And then here's where it eventually leads. But I want you as the client, as the director, to help me help you tell your story. So we're going to do these terrible loose sketches first to just kind of go like, what are the objects? What is the scene of all of this? What are we looking at? You like that? Are you sure you like that? All right, let's move on to colors. Let's explore several different color things. That's the one you want? Are you sure that's the one you want? Are you willing to pay more if you change your mind and come back to changing
revision
this?
passes? Yeah.
Like, I put it into my contrast to go, once you've locked a certain setting, we don't go back. Or you can go back. It's just going to cost you this much. And boy, that saves a lot. Like, people are like, how do you get clients to stop making you work overtime? Like,
you charge them for it.
Go to the money, go to the producer and be like, yeah, it's $400 an hour. And if you want 8 extra hours, there you go. Like, I'm happy to do that. You can change it forever if you're going to pay me those rates. But like, I want to get this done. We have 2 weeks to do this really advanced thing. We have 3 days to do this thing. I'm going to show you the process that works, the iterations and the speed of a professional, and it's going to save you time and money. Because if you're paying me hourly as a freelance artist, you're going to want me to do this in 2 hours, not 8 hours. So if I have that speed, it actually gets me more work, because I get more clients that are like, wow, Jeremy knows what he's doing, and he does this faster than the beginner people. And, this works out great for us because we get a deal, and then I get to charge a higher hourly rate because I can do it in less hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to see that as a video, a way that you help keep people on track, and the people in this situation being the people who hired you.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Keeping managers on track, keeping clients on track.
Yeah, that's a big thing. While we're talking about that, I did have a conversation that was really fun with some friends. There's another Pixar colleague of mine invited me to go speak. There's another company that's called Thoughtful 3D. And we had a conversation. They did a podcast, and I was part of that conversation. And we were talking about skills that are needed now. Like when in the 90s, if you knew the software, you got a job. Where now, no one cares that you know the software. Like that's not even a part of
that's bare minimum. That's the bar for entry.
Right. Exactly. Now, people skills, like we really talked a lot about the people skills side of this. And like, man, you have to know how to be a diplomat. You have to know how to speak tech and speak art and speak producer and speak money, like all of these things. If you want to learn to really be successful in this industry, you better need to know how to communicate complex ideas, how to ask the right questions. Like one of the hardest parts of being a freelance artist is the client is asking for something that's ridiculous because they think they understand it, but with your experience, you might actually understand more. How do you diplomatically give them something different, but in the vein of what they are truly asking for?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to just be like, no, I'm going to give them exactly what they ask for, and it's ugly, but that's what
they wanted.
That's what they wanted. But sometimes that's the skill of being able to go, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to do yes and. Let's play like we're doing improv. So I'm going to give them exactly what they want, but I'm also going to give a few more variations, like this is exactly what you asked for. And here's a couple of different ideas that I think can help tell your story stronger by adding in a little bit of bounce over here, by adding a little bit of shape change over here. And in most cases, that's the point that they're like, that's brilliant. You're amazing. Like that's what you want. You want your clients to go, you gave us something beyond what we were asking. And like, that's what will keep you employed.
Yeah.
That's what
I like the way that you're talking about it in because the thing that it sounds like you're also doing as a core tenet of the people skills here is making it seem like, yes, I've understood the genius that you're saying, manager.
Yes.
Like, let me put this on the page. And then when they work with someone else, they're like, you can't do it like Jeremy does. He takes my words and puts them on the page.
It makes them better. Yeah. I mean, these are all skills that are necessary. And I think that especially in the age, this is another reason not to use AI, is that like if you use ChatGPT to write your emails, you're not going to be learning that human communication skill yourself.
Yeah.
And everything's going to fall apart when you get to a studio if you rely too heavy on these tools to do this stuff for you. Because in the moment, they're going to want to see a sketch that you're doing live in front of them. In the moment, they're going to want to hear your thoughts and your ability to communicate. So, I mean, like, I think we should be spending more time on those core skills. And if they want to use AI, fine. But I want to make sure that if they don't, because a lot of studios are banning it, that you're ready for that, that you really have those core skills, the communication skills, the drawing skills, the painting skills, the design skills to do all of this work with speed and accuracy and good communication.
Yeah. What you do in the moments that people aren't looking and they're not seeing your work happen informs what you do when they do see that work happen. And that's important in all things, whether that's you write your really grumpy email to whatever person at your company and you throw it into ChatGPT and GPT and you tell it to like make it sound nicer or whatever.
Right.
That like when you go to respond to something that someone else says in person to you that makes you grumpy, you're going to look pissed. And that's bad people skills.
Yep.
That applies to how you make your art as well.
Yeah.
I did still have two things. One that's just a fun one, and then one that I think actually operates as a summarization of what you did here today.
Yep.
So the summarizing one is Lana saying, I just still don't understand how to do lighting without a reference. So you started from a reference that gave you a tone. It didn't inform
Yep.
what you did here. It just said a little bit hazy and a little bit warm in color.
Yep.
But the way that you found your lighting was by starting with identifying your light sources and then modifying from there and then kind of filling things in. Will you take us through those layers?
So
if you still have those, I should say. I think some of those might have been more merged.
Yes, I mean I have all of these layers. So let's just go through again the process of what I did again. So first I started with ambient occlusion pass. Let me turn on my line art again. And I'm just thinking about general tone as a base, and I'm working up from here. I then add in the pools of light. If you don't know how to do the pools of light, this is where I can help teach you the idea of, learning one at a time. Take one thing at a time. Learn to paint direct light sources first, then learn to diffuse those light sources and make them soft and get accurate shadows with lights changing angles. And this is, again, what I do in the Painting Light 102 is like, that's part of the homework is like paint a light from over here, from over here, from over here, this color, watch what happens with these. And then I'm doing that, the candle. And again, it's really soft, but I'm focusing in on where are the light sources, and then the light falls off in its color from there. So I'm going yellow at its core, and then it's shifting more towards orange following a concept of color temperature that I also talk about in the courses. And then there's a light over here. I added a second layer to just make it more punchy. Here's my direct sunlight. Here's my sun fog. Here's my bounce light. Here's my fireplace. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try something. I'm going to take all of these adjustments that we did to this scene, and I'm going to move them on top of those lights right here. Okay, so these are now the local color adjustments where I use curves to like this makes the pages more white and the beard more white. This makes the chair more red. This makes the table more brown. This makes the bed more blue. And I can come back and paint these until I'm happy with it. If I can get to this point, then my refinement, I have to then rely on my knowledge of lighting color. So this comes from years of color studies. I do want to say, I started with traditional drawing is where I kind of worked, and I kind of sucked at painting, because I didn't understand color and light. I just understood value. So I was doing a lot of pencil. And then when I, built things and I colorized it, it all looked kind of muddy. It wasn't until I started working in 3D and building lights this way where I'm like, this is a warm light and the way it falls off and the color temperature and this light and how they add together. Once I started doing that, and then I started doing color studies. Back in 2003, I was invited by one of the art directors to come with us on Fridays, and we set up a still life and we paint it. We have 1 hour, paint something that you see. Traditional paint, acrylic, oils, whatever. They had all the supplies. Just set it up, paint it. And I did that every single week for 8 years. And then I continued that on. So I've painted so many things that I really understand the difference of if I've got a mug, I understand how those highlights work, how bright they are, where are the edges, where are the highlights. I've painted this so many times. An object with subsurface scattering, the highlights, metal, what do all these different things do? And that gives me the basis for oh, I see how light bounces. I see how light reflects. I see how it refracts. I see how it scatters. And learning the physics of doing that, and then trying these imaginative approaches. And you're going to fail at first, but that's okay. Learn to fail forward. Remember, you're not being graded on art. There's no right or wrong way to do this. There are just things that you can communicate better to your audiences. There are those assumptions that people make to go, that's what bounce light looks like. And subconsciously I know it, but I don't know it in my head. Your job as an artist is to learn to take things from the subconscious, to put it in your mind, to be like, there's a light over here. It bounces up this way. This is how it affects the local color. This is how it adds specular highlights. This is how it blooms. I'm really taking the time to learn these things through study. and then it gets easier and easier. Like what I painted today with this little gnome creature makes it a little bit easier to understand this character in this scene. But this is from years of experience of lots of painting to kind of like, all right, there's the light here, and then there's light under here, and then there's this color over here, and I'm shifting all of these things. Like we don't have time in 2 hours for me to tell you how I, 20 years of painting. That's what the courses are for. Like I can really break it down, into very specific chunks. Like try this, now try this, now try this, and you can learn this craft.
Yeah. The good news is Jeremy did put all that information into his courses that are on sale for 20% off right now. You can get Painting Light 101, 102, and 103, all 20% off right now, with 103 just having released. It's brand new, hot off the presses. The ink is still fresh on all these sexy lights.
Yeah. And then there's going to be more. I have more stuff coming soon, new courses that are in the works. And I'm excited in the next few months to finish up a couple of these and make them available as well. This is going to be exciting. The next big one for me, just to build a little buzz, would be photography for painters.
Heck yeah.
And to really understand how cameras work and how you can utilize this for your art. So not just photography for photography's sake, but photography for artists, for people who don't normally use them, because it's such a great way to learn. Again, we want to learn every way we can. Go take an improv class, take acting classes, get your body in these positions, photograph yourself, learn about photography, learn about psychology, learn as much as you can, because the rising tide lifts all boats. And if you have skill blending, you build one side of yourself that's going to get you knowledge. You can apply that back to your art, and everything lifts together, and your stories will get stronger. Your communication gets stronger, your job potential gets stronger, and it's just exciting and fun too.
Absolutely. Jeremy, did you ever hear the story about how Nintendo hires people?
No. How do they?
Nintendo had a standing rule. I don't know if it still exists. I would imagine it's probably like a thing that they adhere to because it worked so well for them. They would not hire anyone whose main hobby or their biggest hobby was playing video games. They had to have other hobbies. And so when you look at, like, even for example, it's not Nintendo like first party, it's a separate company, but the creator of Pokemon, the whole reason, like one of the things that informed the story of Pokemon and how Pokemon works is that he was like a bug catcher. He would collect bugs. Those things, it informs everything else. What you choose to learn, it all informs everything else you do. It reframes the way that you think about something. There's tons to it.
That's really cool. I mean, I personally believe that we should always have that curiosity, and like, I just want to learn everything I can, even if it's not for money or work. It's just, I'm fascinated, like I want to eternally be a student of life and light and color and anything that I can, just because it's fascinating, just for the sake of enjoying the learning. Like when I think about, if the worst comes to the worst and AI takes over our jobs, I'm still going to do this stuff. I'm still going to make movies. I'm still going to paint because I love it. I love it for the joy of it. And I mean, there's a big difference between you paint because you want to make money or you want to get paid to paint. You see that, like, those sound very similar, but like getting paid to paint or getting paid to make movies is more like you love the craft so much you would love to be able to not have to do a second job. You love to just do this full time because you love the craft so much itself, versus going, I want to make money. Like if you're going to want to make money, don't get into this industry.
Yeah, just go like find the next crypto and just get in at the ground floor on it.
Right.
Go do that instead.
To me, let's just be philosophical to end this. I think about the growing economy and where things are going and all of the craziness that's happening in the world. For me, when I think about what I really want, is like, I don't want to become a millionaire, billionaire ever. All I want is sustainability and to enjoy what I do every day with the people that I enjoy. Like the reason why I started my company doing this full time and I left most of the industry was because I want there to be sustainability. Like I just want to work regular hours, having fun with the people that I do, making art that has meaning and has story and has potency, and make that the base. Not, investors, not working for, some board somewhere else, like I don't want to make money for them. I just want my group of people to be able to keep doing this, to make just enough to keep doing it again. and again and again. And that to me is the ultimate lifestyle. Like we said, making bread, like remember, factories can pump out bread faster than an artisan bread company, but people still buy artisan bread because it's good, it's high quality, it was handmade by a shop, and there's something about getting that fresh, it's still warm, it's so good. And a lot of the authenticity of our artwork, this is where the future probably is heading, where like I don't need to see another spaceship movie. I just don't care. I don't need a visual effects extravaganza. I've seen enough of those. What I want are stories with heart and authenticity that moves me emotionally. And I want that in my illustrations, and I want that in the films that I make, and I want that in every single thing I do, to have a human touch with human fingerprints all over it, and that it's enough that I can keep doing this as a career for the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well said. If you guys want to hear more of what Jeremy has to say, you guys can find him over at Lighting Mentor here on YouTube and at lightingmentor.com. These are the best places to find out what Jeremy's up to, what new courses he's got, if he opens up some random like person-to-person thing, some like mentorship sessions that he'll have open at some point. You guys can find out more about him all over there, or you can get his courses on Proko at the link that you see below in the description. Just follow Jeremy and learn some things. Be passionate, guys.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. This is fun. I love the Proko community. You all are just awesome, and it's really fun to work with you and supporting the community. It brings me great joy to watch people grow and thrive in their art, because like your stories are going to be unique, different than mine, and that's going to encourage me. Like, this is not a competitive thing. This is a thing of like, I want to see you thrive, because I'm going to be inspired by what you do, and you'll be inspired by what I do, and it's just this awesome thing that just keeps growing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for being here, both to you, Jeremy, and to the people watching. If you guys have any other questions and you're watching this as a VOD, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Jeremy does get in there every once in a while, and we're definitely going to answer some comments. So thank you guys, and have a good rest of your day out there.